A few weeks ago, I did a video about the small amount of games that are based around World War I. I also pondered why there hadn't been all that many games about the Great War, and stuck in a few little ideas that I'd had for World War I games that wouldn't just be first-person shooters or strategy games or flight sims. Something different that would convey the impact the war had, something that had potential for real human drama. It was a pretty good video, at least I thought it was, but everybody started going on about this upcoming game called Valiant Hearts that, admittedly, I'd never heard of. And apparently it was going to be something different. It was going to contain that drama. It may well be just the game that I was looking for. And having done the video, well, it'd be silly not to have a look at it. And so here it is, fresh out on all the usual platforms. Valiant Hearts is a game by Ubisoft Montpellier. It uses the war to tell a story surrounding 4 people, all of whom are connected in various ways: family, friendship, a common enemy, a faithful companion. Even if the war itself separates them, those bonds will always be there. Won't they? Now, in the World War I video I examined a few of the games that did take a bit of a different approach from the norm, games like The Last Express, a point-and-click adventure, or Necrovision, which throws zombies into the mix. They're certainly different, but kinda stray a bit far away. The Last Express is great, but it uses the imminent breakout of war as a backdrop as opposed to a main plot point. And I don't really need to say that something like Necrovision is pure pulp fantasy and not serious at all. Valiant Hearts though takes a different approach while being entirely about the war. It's a side-scrolling puzzle game, complete with the odd bit of action and stealth here and there, but mainly it's puzzles. The characters you play as all have certain things they can do. Emil is able to dig holes, Freddy uses cutters to get past barbed wire, Anna can heal the sick, and so on. And you'll be using them all. You'll also be using Walt, a dog that accompanies the characters on their journey, linking them all together. He can distract enemies, he can find items in the ground, he can fit through small gaps and even pull the odd lever for you. In short, he's bloody useful, one of the most helpful canine companions you'll find in a video game, right up there with Rush, Dogmeat and Yamato from Shadow Dancer. The puzzles in the game are generally in line with a fair amount of games we've seen recently, particularly of the side-scrolling variety. If you're already familiar with games like The Cave or Trine, or going back a bit, Pugsy and The Lost Vikings, then you'll know the form here. A lot of the puzzles usually revolve around gradually making your way towards that one item you need to progress. They're not especially taxing, but there is a definite curve here, and the puzzles do get more satisfying as you go along, as more of them revolve around timing and cooperation. The little flecks of action you get here and there also work very well. It certainly adds to the tension when you're trying to dodge enemy fire and shells left and right, or endless steel hand grenades tossed from a zeppelin. Another fine touch is the addition of little driving levels where you have to avoid objects. Do you remember the Stampede level from the Lion King game? Pretty much exactly like that, only with beautiful graphics and synced up to suitably dynamic classical music. Puzzle platformers like this game usually do a good job of creating an experience that you can take at your own pace, but a really good one doesn't mind changing it up every so often either, and Valiant Hearts does that very well. The art style is definitely something to behold as well. It's actually quite cartoony, in a specific way. It's not a dark, muted, graphic novel sort of style that you might often see in a game. The colours are a lot more vivid, the characters painted with bolder strokes. Now if you look at Ubisoft Montpellier's previous, that's less of a surprise. These are the guys who made the Rayman series of games. You know, the one that's a pretty good contender for the greatest series of platform games ever made. Now this may well be a cheaper download-only title, but these folks are major players, famous for beautiful looking and really kind of cute games with animation right out the top drawer. They've made great 3D games as well, particularly the much-loved Beyond Good and Evil, but this sort of thing is their calling card. Valiant Hearts uses those same skills, but with a wholly different motivation, creating something that looks quite like a European comic. There's little touches of Asterix here and there, not to mention a big slice of Tintin. The exaggerated proportions, the walking animations, and the little things like not being able to see the eyes of the characters, always covered up by helmets or hair and the like, these are massively European touches that you'd never see across the pond. And it works beautifully. It calls back to the past while looking forwards, a look that's certainly retro but not consciously so, authentic but not striving for it, and letting these characters and the nightmarish situation that they're in slowly creep on you. Now over the years many people have captured the horror of the war in many different ways. Oh What a Lovely War did it in musical form, Blackadder Goes Forth did it for a sitcom, PJ Harvey's Let England Shake captured it with an album, and I've even seen it done on stage. Valiant Hearts is for me the first video game that's managed it. It is, by a considerable distance, more effective in its presentation than any other World War I game ever made, and it earns every last bit of it. I don't know how I can praise it any further than that, to be honest. But I shall continue. Another thing that I love about this game is that it actually does try and teach people about the war. Collectibles in this game actually mean something. You find items like a tin of sardines, or the button of a French soldier's uniform, or a urine-soaked cloth that was used to protect against the effects of mustard gas. And how do I know that? Well, because when I picked it up I got a little tidbit that explained the relevance of such an item and how it was used in the war. It's a basic little thing, but it's definitely appreciated. You also get other little factoids about the war as you progress, bits of information here and there that add colour to the game and put everything into context. And I love it. It's not as though every game should set out to both educate and entertain, but not enough games pay a great deal of attention to the education bit. Valiant Hearts does so in a way that could almost be considered a new approach to edutainment, something that has a bit more substance than, I don't know, a pithy quote about war that's scrawled over the screen when you die in a Call of Duty game. You could use this to teach someone, or at least give them a summary, about the war itself, something that I dearly wanted out of that mythical game I created. There's also a bit of a personal touch here, what with the French characters, the language, the national pride, and some of the information that paints the French effort in another light. A sense of, this is how the war affected us as people, and this is how we got through it. Something that goes against the usual French war stereotypes, you know? Liberty, equality and fraternity play a pretty damn big part here, and even though things were hardly perfect, and the game most definitely recognises that, the game is proud. Patriotic almost, but with a more nuanced look on what such a word actually means, and how you represent the values of the country you're from, which isn't necessarily through having a gun put in your hands. You certainly won't find a more French game than Valiant Hearts released this year, that's for sure. And of course, there is the story itself. The core of the game follows a family that is torn apart by the war. Karl, a German living in France, is forced to leave the country, his wife and son at the start of the war, and his stepfather Emile, despite his age, is also enlisted to fight on the French side. Other characters join in along the way. Freddie, an American, quickly becomes Emile's friend, and Anna, a nurse searching for her own father, also joins in the effort. And then of course, there's Walt, who Emile runs into on his first day. It doesn't take long for them to become inseparable, and he links all the characters together, accompanying various members of the group at times. The game also takes in some of the most important and some of the bloodiest moments of the war, from Marne to Verdun to the disastrous Nivelle offensive at Arras. And it strikes me immediately that I can't think of another game that actually has you going over the top like this, and it's hard not to be shaken by what you see. It creates a sense of futility, of meaningless loss. You may be controlling your character, they may be dodging shells and timing their runs, but everywhere around you there's the fallen, rushing headlong into machine gun fire. There are certain details in the story that I wouldn't want to spoil, as well as an attempt to set up a main antagonist, but really the main enemy of Valiant Hearts is the war itself. The war is a machine that constantly hungers for more. Body after body, it never stops wanting, and it's never left wanting. Even the smallest victories in the war here and there feel hollow. However, there is still a story of human triumph in the face of the war here, as the paths of our characters gradually separate and dovetail with each other. And the end result is a powerful drama that treats its main subject appropriately, but doesn't shy away from a more intimate story either. It juggles both extremely well, and it's honestly one of the best stories I've seen for a while in a video game. It puts nearly every other war game to shame, makes them almost feel like something you shouldn't play because they don't respect their subject matter the way that this game does. That sounds silly, but it's true. The war drama of Valiant Hearts is just so far removed from the pulpiness you usually find here. It's basically on its own. And so, in closing, I would say that Valiant Hearts probably has a pretty good shout at being one of my games of the year. And it was perhaps the game that I've been looking for all this time. I wondered how long it would take for a video game to display the maturity and level of storytelling needed to actually be able to take on a subject like the First World War in this way, without dealing with it ham-fistedly or being too offensive or just being too damn immature. And it turned out that the answer wasn't that long at all. We still have some ways to go, but a game like Valiant Hearts shows us how far we've come, delivering some of the most stirring, powerful and heartfelt moments you'll find in a game this year. Emotions that you wouldn't usually find in a video game, but they're definitely here. And if nothing else, this is an incredibly well-made game by one of the best developers going, a team that has a reputation for making basically nothing aside from gems, doing what they do best. And for that reason alone, if nothing else, you should play Valiant Hearts and savour every last moment of it.
Could no longer be used to make weapons of war.
Thanks for watching my video. If you really liked it, maybe you could consider pressing the thumbs up icon that's just to the left here. Or maybe you could subscribe to the channel, if you so desire. If you're really crazy, maybe you could also follow me on Twitter, or even support me on Patreon. You know, all the usual stuff. Someone's got to pay the bills. As always, wherever you are, whoever you be, have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time.